Real stories of werewolves, of dogman from history, from your emails, illustrated and animated with the democratizing magic of machine learning AI. Welcome to Scary Stories.
Werewolf Portal. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I had a weird experience that involved a dogman, but he wasn't an undiscovered cryptid or anything like that. This was definitely some kind of creature from another reality, and I know that because I saw him enter our world from his other plane of existence. I saw it with my own two eyes. In fact, my whole family had to deal with these events throughout an entire summer until the location of the portal shifted out of our backyard. At least that's sort of how we interpret it now. We didn't use the word portal or even the word dogman back when this was all going on. I want to say first that I'm writing you because of AI video animations. Back when they first started coming out, the ones that look like photos, not the ones that look like cartoons, they had a surreal quality that made me feel upset and unhappy. They creeped me out. I guess they creeped everyone out, and some of them still do. That's probably why you decided to use them to make creepy illustrations for your show. But I had a special personal reason for being creeped out by AI video generations. They reminded me of my actual dogman experiences, which did not make sense to me as they happened. It felt almost like I was in an AI universe while they were happening, although again, AI is not a term that we knew back in the 1970s when this was all going down. When I saw your channel, I thought maybe it might be a good idea to tell you my family's stories, and that you might get lucky with your animations and really communicate what my family had to go through for that month or two. I have had friends in the intervening years since this happened who told me that we were dealing with shamans or skinwalkers. Supposedly these entities are intelligent and they can move between worlds, as well as change their physical appearance. From what I was told, it sounds like they enjoy being werewolf-type entities much of the time, but they could also take on human or other forms as well. That to me sounds like skinwalkers might be one of the origins of vampire legends, because vampires are also said to be able to change themselves into wolves and bats and spiders. This is assuming skinwalkers are real, or that they exist at least. It's hard to call any of what I'm about to talk about real, and in fact I don't think it's real in the way you and I are, or the way bears and cats and snakes are. But these things are real enough that you better get out of their way if they cross your path. I don't know if that makes sense, but honestly I'm not even sure if the parts that I lived through made sense while I was living through them. I read every one of Linda Godfrey's books about real werewolves and real wolfmen, and she seems to think these are ordinary animals, real wolves that sometimes walk around upright on their hind legs. What my family experienced were not wild animals. What we were going through was a mix between a horror movie and a science fiction film, more than it was a nature documentary. These creatures were at least as smart as humans, even though they walked around covered in fur and grunting like animals. Again, like I implied earlier, none of us were ever 100% sure that these were the real way these creatures looked, or at least we weren't sure if they looked like this, all the time. We used to call them werewolves, so it wasn't a huge leap for us to think that they might be shapeshifters and possibly very intelligent. This was either the summer of 1971 or 72. I was talking to my older brother about this recently, trying to get my memory straight before I wrote it all down for you in your show. My brother Jim remembers the 1970s a lot better than he remembers yesterday or the day before, so he has actually been a big help in throwing this together. Still, the closest we could narrow it down to is 71 or 72. We remember that Dark Shadows was still on TV, and that we would hum the spooky theremin theme song of that show to make light of the situation we were in. It's sort of the same as when people start singing the Twilight Zone theme or the X-Files theme to joke around that someone is getting spooky and weird. But we would do it to each other, even though we all knew the dogman appearances were very real. We were so scared of what was happening that we sorta had to joke around about it. I mean, it seems so ridiculous. I remember we once had company over, some friends of my mom when she was a kid who'd grown up and were in the area on vacation visiting us. We started to tell them about the werewolf portal in our backyard, and they burst out laughing derisively. That demonstrated to us that we were correct in thinking that none of this made any sense. It also clued us in that we better keep this all a family secret. So we never heard of an interdimensional portal, and we didn't know werewolves were real. And then one night, as we were having a barbecue at our picnic table in the back of our house, we got loudly and rudely introduced to both concepts. In the middle of the yard, both our dogs gathered and started barking at the air above and between them. At first we told them to shut up, then we laughed at how weird they were. But then something happened that stopped our laughter. This sort of circular lightning bolt appeared in the air and started spinning in a circle in the middle of the yard. It looked like a hole opened up in the air itself, and there was some other place beyond that hole. It wasn't just blackness. It looked like they were an hour or two behind us over there, as I saw sun there, while it was nighttime by us. A wind or breeze came out of the hole, and it smelled sweet in a way I'd never smelled before, and I don't think I've ever smelled again since. I think it was that other dimension that I was smelling, but it's possible I was smelling the electrical effect itself, I don't know. The electric hole seemed to solidify for just a second, and then this sort of big monster materialized out of the blue electricity and floated over to us. Not walked, but floated over, like Casper the Unfriendly Ghost. Of course, we screamed and ran inside. What would you do? Once we got in, my parents and brother clogged the windows and wouldn't let me look out. But they all told me later that the big floating werewolf was eating all the rest of our food. As soon as he finished his meal, the creature dropped to the ground and ran off, but my brother couldn't remember if he ran off on 2 legs or 4. The next time we saw the creature, it seemed even larger and bulkier, more muscular somehow, as though life had been agreeing with it. It emerged from the circular blue lightning hole, and once again floated in the air. This time it held its place in the air like a helicopter, observing us and the rest of its surroundings. My brother shouted that it had no feet, and we looked down to see that he seemed to be correct. Mom screamed and literally fainted face forward onto the lawn, just like in the movies. My brother Jim laughed. Then, instead of helping my mother, my dad gave Jim a nice red handprint on his cheek to teach him not to laugh at his mother's fainting. Dad had priorities. Jim ran inside screaming that he hated his father, and Dad chased Jim inside, threatening him. I helped my mom sit up, and we both watched the werewolf thing land on feet that were somehow just there when he needed them to be. Then he sort of trotted away like a baseball player heading out to play left field, and after he trotted behind a tree, we couldn't see or hear him anymore. I think he moved on to some third reality, but maybe he just knew how to move silently. I remember that we had this string of lights up in the summer when we were all hanging out after dark as a family. Either the lights were hung from the clothesline or a line of lights was strung up sort of like the clothesline, I don't remember. Neither of us could remember that part very clearly because one night the lights just sort of wiggled out of existence because they were behind the dogman when it made its appearance through the reality warping tunnel. Now this part is hard to explain, but it looked a lot like the weird impossible things that happen in AI videos these days. I'll try to explain. I can't guarantee it'll make sense though. In fact, I can guarantee that it won't. Okay, so the lightning was crackling and spinning in a circle, and the werewolf man walked on out of it, sort of like a burglar climbing through a window into your house. And more than the lightning, there was also a clear warping of the world, in a circle all inside and around that living circle of lightning. Like waves on the surface of the ocean, but in 360 degrees all around that vortex portal, pulsing. The further it got away from the hole in reality, the smaller the pulses got. After the creature was fully through the hole, the energy, both in terms of the blue lightning and in terms of the waves in reality, began to dissipate and lessen into nothing. While that was happening, the flux of the universe or the multiverses around that hole made it look like that string of lights I had mentioned earlier were waving and curving and moving in a trippy way. Jim and I were both like, whoa, cool, staring at the lights appearing to morph and change shape. We knew this was an optical illusion, or we thought we did. When the creature ran off on two legs and the lightning turned dark, that string of dancing, moving, mutating lights behind the lightning dimmed with it, and then just ceased to exist, at least in this reality. So it wasn't only an illusion, or the illusion wasn't an illusion. The trick was the reality, and the reality was the trick. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Good, then maybe you can explain it to me. We had this sort of experience happen again to us a number of times that summer. And each time it happened, it was around 45 or 50 minutes later in the day than the time before. We had been telling friends and neighbors about it after summer Bible school, and people expressed an interest in seeing this for themselves. So we alerted the neighbors and our friends when we felt we were certain of the next appearance of the interdimensional vortex or portal. Even though it was happening around 6:30 in the morning on a Sunday, we drew a small crowd, and one of the neighbors had invited a photographer from the local newspaper. People were dressed up because they were going to go to church immediately afterward, and so it was a very unique and bizarre memory from my youth. Almost a dozen people, plus my family, all in their Sunday go-to-meeting clothes, standing on our back porch waiting for a ring of blue fire and lightning to open up and spit out a 6.5-foot tall werewolf man, who did not show up that morning. I remember my father saying, "Our name is Mud," a lot after that. Not just that day, but in general. All the time. From then on. He never carried himself the same way after that. He felt that everyone now saw him as a liar. And not just a liar, but a crazy liar who lied pointlessly about weird stuff. Feeling that the big strange party was now completely over, we went back to eating our summer dinners out back at the picnic table. It was a beautiful sunset that night, but everyone was in a terrible mood after the embarrassment of Dogman's no-show that morning. We then had to go to church with the same people who now thought we were the Wackadoodle family. Only one of the neighbor's kids was on our side, because he still believed that the werewolf from the Twilight Zone was real. Or he wanted to believe in it, one thing or the other. So that kid, I think his name was Erwin or something like that, he was the first one to hear what happened that night when it happened. We didn't see it that time, but after Erwin said shh and made us all listen, I think we heard the tail end of it. It was behind the garage. The lightning circle, it was behind the garage. We had this concrete garage that had a picket fence like maybe 2 feet behind it. It was a tight space, I remember, because sometimes our ball or our frisbee would wind up back there, and I would have to squeeze in and try to bend over sideways to pick it up. There was that little space between the wooden picket fence and the concrete back wall of our little one-car garage, so you can imagine our surprise when we kids ran over and looked into that crevice of space and saw the big macho wolfman stuck in there and scrambling his way to the top of the fence. I thought both he and that fence were going to smash each other to bits. A few inches forward and he might have materialized inside the wooden fence. A few inches back and he might have been inside the concrete wall itself. Maybe. I mean, if it works like that. I watched it happen half a dozen times and I never really understood what I was looking at. The werewolf made himself thin, like how a rat does it. And in 1 second or two he was up on top of that picket fence. Then he stayed there squatting and watching the sunset, ignoring us kids completely and looking off into the distance like some epic hero. To me, he looked more like Batman than like a villain. He seemed more like a superhero than like a monster. But I was a dumb kid with a huge imagination, and the early 70s was a time of great imagination. All our heroes were monsters back then, if you think about it. Even Barnabas Collins, the vampire from that TV show I mentioned before. He often got to play the hero in the stories. Everything felt open to question or reinterpretation in those days. Not in the way it does now, with major corporations trying to force new ideas up all our wazoos, but in spite of what the corporations wanted. That was a time when everything felt new and nothing seemed impossible. The neighbor kid Erwin was good at math, and he felt he could figure out mathematically where and when the werewolf was going to appear next. He made a guess, and Jim and I met him at the place and time. Nothing happened. He made another guess, and we met him again another day. And again, nothing. For Erwin's third guess, only I showed up, and when there was no dogman then either. I told Erwin that I didn't think the werewolf man was coming back. At least not in our reality. Not in our backyard. The poor kid cried and I tried to console him, but there wasn't anything any of us could do to make that beast come back. It was something that happened to us which we won't forget. But it was something that belonged to just that one short period of time. Why? I don't know, don't ask me. You would have to ask that creature that came through. The werewolf portal. Hey guys, I just wanted to let you know that starting this Monday we're doing Scary Camping Week. We've got tons of stories about campers and hikers encountering dogman or werewolves or other wolfman type entities out in nature. A running theme of the week is safety in numbers. And the entire week is going to be partially brought to you by this cool 3-wing tent that's on sale by mail from Walmart at $100 off. They claim it can sleep 16 people, but I would say it can do at least 6 or 7. If you've got kids or if it's an emergency, then maybe 16. These days it makes more sense to go out camping as a small city. As exciting as scary stories are when 1 or 2 people camp alone, it's increasingly a more dangerous thing to do. Not only because of cryptids either, obviously. I know Scary Camping Week doesn't officially start until Monday, but if this swanky mansion of a tent seems like something you'd like to pick up at such a bargain price, the link to snag one is in the description. And if you use that link, then allegedly this channel gets a small commission for each sale. A bunch of werewolves in the swamp made a promo video for it. Get ready, it comes on loud.
Scary Camping Week! Scary Camping Week! Dogman stories this season on Scary Camping Week. Camping and hiking stories all week, plus find out how to get $100 off this tent that you can camp safely in numbers inside of. Scary Camping Week. Scary Camping Week. Dogman stories this season on Scary Camping Week.
Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
story.